Lewis, welcome Rebecca to the meeting. Can I particularly welcome Wakar Asmi and Sharon Thompson. Welcome both of you, new non-executive directors to the board. I think we're really excited about getting people of the stature and skill of Sharon and Wakar onto our board. I am absolutely sure that to our ability to make the right kinds of decisions for the people of Worcestershire and our organisation. So welcome both of you, and we really do look forward to your contribution as the board develops over coming months and years. I also want to say that we try to start off our board meetings with a conversation which focuses.
What happened to me, and therefore what happens to other patients? How can I take that and feed that experience and knowledge back into the trust and actually say, hey, don't treat this as a complaint. Take these observations as opportunities for learning to improve the patient experience for all patients. Okay. I had loads and loads of experiences, great care from the staff, some positive experiences, and also hugely frustrating experiences. I pick out from the forward logo and strap lines. The one that really resonated in my time was the not waiting. Well, my experience was one of regular and consistent waits, and particularly the wait that I experienced around the MRI treatment that I had, and the subsequent length of time it took to get the results. So just focusing on that particular aspect of my stay. So I had a lumbar puncture that on the Saturday. There were some issues with that. There was a decision taken for me to have a second lumbar puncture. The staff were unable to take the second lumbar puncture, and then a decision was made by clinical staff that I should have an MRI. The thing is, as a patient, I was told at 5:30 on a Saturday morning that I needed to have this MRI. Now, the first expectation that creates in me as a patient is I'm woken at 5:30 in the morning to be told that I need an MRI. That immediately triggers, given the circumstances in which I was brought in to a hospital, heck, there must be something seriously wrong if you're waking me at 5:30 in the morning to tell me I need a procedure. But then I'm waiting for 12 hours before I actually have that MRI procedure. So I've been told you need this procedure. It's obviously very important that you need this procedure. Then there's a 12-hour wait. Clearly, MRI is a very expensive resource within the hospital, and the hospital needs to get the best use out of that very expensive resource. So within manufacturing, we talk about that being a constraint resource, and the way that we manage that constraint resource is very, very special in terms of making sure that we get the most capacity out of it. So I get taken up to the MRI unit. I'm sat outside the MRI unit waiting to go in, and I look at the clock and I start thinking, right, okay, so how long am I going to be in here for? Go into the MRI, have the MRI, all the procedures associated with that, come out again, and it was approximately 30 minutes from start to finish. Okay, so mental gymnastics start going on because I'm a lean guy. Okay, so what's the capacity for the MRI? Yeah, how many MRI patients can you actually get through? And do you know that? Does the radiology department know what its capacity is and know whether it's treating the right number of patients, to match the capacity that it should have? So we call that the takt time to the heartbeat, and we use visual management cues to actually, within our manufacturing teams, to say whether they're meeting the heartbeat, meeting the takt time or not. I saw no evidence within the radiology department of those sorts of visual cues in terms of whether they're doing, whether they're on plan, behind plan, ahead of plan, as I would expect to see within a manufacturing environment. So I have my MRI, got taken back down to the ward, and okay, so it's now 6:30 on a Saturday evening, and my as a patient, as a customer, I'm going, okay, this is something that was really important. Please let me know when I'm going to know the results of the MRI. And I was told we should have the results this evening. Okay, so does that mean I will know this evening whether I can go home or not? Yes, you should know that. But I didn't actually get the results from my MRI scan until 11 o'clock on Monday morning, and nobody could tell me what was happening. The scans have gone they've got to be reviewed. It's a weekend. It's got to be reviewed by Birmingham. Okay, right, fine. How long will that take? Well, it's up to Birmingham. Maybe a couple of hours. Right, okay. So 11 o'clock Saturday night, still nothing. Right, clearly nothing's going to happen tonight. Sunday, we got the results. No, we're still waiting to hear. Then the message was they bounced them back to the radiology team for them to review in Worcester. And so it went through that I couldn't actually get a confirmation one way or another. Is there something seriously wrong with me, or can I go home? Just basic question, and nobody being prepared to actually give me a straight answer, which was inordinately frustrating. Just to give you an idea, I was so upset. I'm a reasonably robust 57-year-old. Had quite a lot of life experiences. I could not get. I literally was broke down in tears at the desk in the ward because nobody was able to tell me. Can I go? Just that simple question. Can I go home? Now, there's loads and loads of opportunity in terms of the back end of that MRI process about the decision-making process to get information back to the ward and then back to the patient in terms of this is the next step. And that the importance of that information flow to the patient is absolutely crucial. I was kept in using a precious resource, a hospital bed, for 40-something hours. Between me having the MRI scan and me being released. It created all sorts of stress for me. I was, as I say, broken down in tears. However, that's a bad experience. There's loads of waiting, and there's loads of opportunity to look at the process. And I've been talking to Anna and been talking to Marsha about ideas and ways in which we can actually improve process. But the most important thing, and from my 35 plus years of experience of lean and continuous improvement and development, is the team, the people who are doing the work, because the people doing the work are the people who know the most about the problems. We have something that we use that is called the Iceberg of Ignorance, and this is research that was done in Japan many years ago. If you think about the frontline team who are doing the work, they see 100% of the problems. Because they see 100% of the problems, they're the people we need to equip with the problem-solving skills to actually resolve those problems for the customer, whether that's a patient in a hospital or whether that's a customer of a car dealership or whatever it is. Those people know the problems. We need to equip them with the skills, time and capability to actually resolve those problems. The team leaders working with those teams probably are aware of 3/4 of the problems. By the time you get up to a ward management level, or a production management level in manufacturing, the awareness of the number of problems and the actual detail of those problems is less than 10%. And by the time it gets up to executive level, you're less than 1%. So it's at our senior management level, we have an overview, and all we see is the results of everything going on, and we go, when our KPIs are not as good as we want them to be, our performance is lacking in this area and needs to improve in this area. But what we don't see, and what we can't see, at an executive level, is what's the real things that are going on? Those individual problems, those point problems day by day by day by day, that actually are getting in the way of patient care, getting in the way of flow of patients through the organisation. Those are the problems that we need to engage the team in actually solving. And in my conversation, some of my conversations, I had one evening when I was trying to get, I think it was probably the Saturday evening, when I was just trying to get an answer as to whether I was going to get an answer, as to whether I was okay or not. And I was talking to the doctor on duty in the ward, and I was talking about Yeah, the role of all of us is to do our job. To do our job is to do the work that we have to do and find ways of improving the work that we have to do each and every day. Every team, every day, improving the work that we do. And he goes, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but we need the opportunity to actually do that. We need the opportunity to come together as a ward team, to actually look at what's the problem we're going to fix today. Yeah, okay. What's the problem we had yesterday that we're going to fix today? Because my 35 years of experience of working with teams and working with manufacturing is that the long-term continuous improvement gains come from the engagement of the teams. Yeah. So we've got manufacturing. I'm going off at a tangent, and ladies and gentlemen, if you want, nobody's asking me any questions yet. I'm going off a slight tangent. We've got a manufacturing facility up in Yorkshire, and I started working with just over 5 years ago, and they thought that the best that they could do was 500 units of the product that they produce a day, a shift, and that was the gold standard. Today, with the work that that team have done, and it's literally been continual day by day by day, just looking at the issues and improving the work that they do, they consistently hit 600 plus units a shift without capital investment, without more people, and it's just been focus on a problem, fix it, focus on a problem, fix it, and each one of the, going back to the iceberg of ignorance, working on something, all right, in that 100% that is causing a problem that is reducing your output. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've got great opportunities. You've got a great team of people, that work within the hospital. They need to be energized and engaged in terms of daily problem solving, and it's not. Trust me, 35 years of experience. You've got to give them the tools, but the hard work, all right, the real hard work is the daily management coaching. Yeah. The technical expertise, the leadership team has got great technical expertise. Probably the one thing that you need to develop as leaders is the ability to teach and coach your teams as problem solvers. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Whether that's
Nigel,
medical. Sorry, Vicky.
Sorry, I was just going to come in, Nigel, because it's obviously time's moving on a little bit, and I just wanted to make sure that the board have had enough opportunity to ask you questions, Nigel, just on specific elements that they picked up.
Sorry, I get passionate about
you're
continuous
massively
improvement
enthusiastic,
stuff.
which is fantastic. And I thank you for sharing the experience. But I know Anna and Marcia, you've been already chatting to Nigel. And as a board, we're going to be considering the single improvement methodology, Nigel, in next month's board meeting. And it just would be interesting just to hear from Anna and Marcia, just in terms of what they've gleaned from you so far, and then come to some questions to David, if that's okay.
Thank you, Vicky. I just wanted to briefly add, I don't want to take up too much time. I just think our experience of working with Nigel is really demonstrative of how we're seeing complaints as opportunities for improvement as a trust, and how we're embracing as many opportunities as we can to really collaborate with our patients as partners in a meaningful way. I just wondered, Marcia, if I could invite you to share how we've been practically working with Nigel and what that specifically means for our developing work on the single improvement methodology.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Nigel. It's good to see you again. I think there's very little that I can add to Nigel's story. He's eloquently articulated with a different lens as to his experience of care in our hospital. I kind of feel like Nigel landed just at the right time, really, for us and with our journey of single improvement methodology. So Nigel's actually, over the last couple of months, become my kind of sensei and coach. And it's been really, really helpful to have some discussions of what he's experienced, but also where we can be as an organisation. So The other thing that Nigel has described is how we make sure that those that do the work are enabled to improve, have the capacity and have the capability. But also, Nigel being that prime example, it's how we ensure our patients are seen as partners in that improvement journey as well. Nigel came along with me to a patient forum group, and they were quick to try and snap him up onto the forum. But it is people like Nigel who's experienced care, whether it's within our organisation or anywhere across the system, who will be those partners in improvement as well. So, Nigel, I just want to thank you, because you have kind of been a bit of a God sent from heaven, and it's been really helpful having you as that Sensei kind of coach, and we'll continue that relationship. So thank you, Nigel.
Okay. Sorry,
any questions? Can I, before you, any other questions people want to raise with Nigel before I try and...
Chairman, could I raise one question, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And good morning, Nigel. Going back to the start of your experience, very often the angst that can be caused in our patients' minds, I understand, is because of the lack of information, so lack of communication. Yeah. When you were told you were having an MRI scan, was there adequate communication to you about the reason for the scan, the potential that it would show, and so the blanks around MRI scan, was that filled in as much as you think it could have been at that time? And then following that, Vicky, if you could offer comment, please, on whether Nigel was bumping into a lack of 7-day working or a weekend situation with regard to getting his results back. Thank you, Chairman.
So to answer that specifically, Mark, I mean, you've got to remember my recall is going to be a little bit hazy because it was 5:30 in the morning that I was woken up. It was obviously so I was told yes, you needed MRI because we've not been able to take the second lumbar puncture. Okay, so the reasons for the MRI, were clear in that regard. The specifics as to what the MRI was trying to do were not so clear.
Okay, do you want me to come in, Mark?
Yeah.
I mean, I think in response to your point, I think it's very clearly the 7-day issue does play into certainly the context that Nigel faced and the question that you pose. I think it's without the level of detail that obviously we need to understand a little bit more in terms of answering the specifics. Then there is always a radiologist on call. In terms of the urgency, and obviously I wouldn't go into personal details, but the issue is about whether it's urgent and therefore needs a verbal report over that 7-day period, which we'd be able to do, and then getting a written report which would follow. And I think the bit to your question is that in communication, it needs to be really clear from a ward point of view, which is the note that I've written to myself. Do we know enough about the diagnostics and the remit for reporting from a ward team's point of view to be able to set out that expectation for Nigel? Because you were left with no information at all, Nigel, from our earlier discussion in the week, to be able to know and expect when he could receive the update. And if he'd known and expected when that time frame was going to be, it would have hopefully enabled him to relax a little bit more, not waiting on tender hooks. And that's the difficulty. It's setting up very clear expectations based on realistic 7-day cover, and usually with a normal, not rather than urgent diagnostic, it would be a sort of 2-day turnaround in terms of reporting. But this was something that had been undertaken on an urgent basis. And so that's the element that we need to be very clear with expectations about how we go back to the patient and support them with, understandably, the anxieties that Nigel had at the time. So certainly with this patient story and the individual experience, we will go into more detail and make sure we understand and get an answer from Nigel on that.
Yeah, I mean, I know Richard's got his hand up. I always said when I sent my letter in to the board, following my experiences, I didn't want it raised as a complaint because I actually wanted to help, to use it as an opportunity to help, not treat it as a complaint. To your point, it was very clear that the ward staff had no information. Yeah, because if they'd had the information, they would have told me.
Okay, I've got Richard, and then I'll kind of try and sum up, and we'll move on. Richard.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Nigel, very much for sharing this. I thought this was very insightful, and I hope you're doing well, by the way, in terms of your own health these days. And the question I've got is not so much for Nigel. I think it's maybe more to the executive team, because we talked about single improvement methodology, and I think that is the right route to take to fundamentally improve our organization and people's capability to make those small improvements that Nigel was talking about. We've talked about the information to patients, which is at least as important as the process itself. But I'm also curious, how much information do our own teams have in relation to the very scarce resources that we manage? And do they know what the norm is? And do they know how they're performing? And would that really not help them improve performance without really changing the process in the first place? Because I'm a little concerned that, before the entire organization is on this improvement journey and they've got the capabilities and their team leaders have got the capabilities, it will take months. I think there's short-term stuff based on Nigel's story that could be done.
Really good point, Richard. Can I suggest that we ask Matthew to say a few words, and then we'll wrap
thank you, Chair. Thank you, and thank you, Nigel, for sharing your experience and your insights. And I'm very keen that we engage people like you that have had experience to help us move up a gear in terms of the way in which we deliver our patient experience and the productivity and efficiency of our services. And Richard, I think the honest answer to your question, do the radiology team know how many scans they could do, and do they have daily management processes in place? Are they, we've got X number of staff today, we can do X number of scans? The answer is no. I think in certain parts of the organisation where there's been some improvement work, there will be potentially a better grip on that. But do we have that approach? No. Is that something we should be working on? Yes. And I think you're right. We shouldn't necessarily wait for the coaching and training with the organisation that will partner us through the single improvement process to get into some of this. The radiology department has had some lean improvement work over recent years. Is daily management embedded as a way of working? Do the radiology staff come into work knowing that they've got the freedoms and tools to improve their work incrementally? No, I don't think so. So that's the journey I think you're rightly pointing out that we need to go on. And that's why next month's board, I'm hoping, will approve the business case for us to get cracking on moving forward in this way. And the timing, obviously, will be hopefully kicking off once COVID is less of a front and centre issue for us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Nigel. First of all, can I just say how sorry, apologise on behalf of the board for the experience that you had. No one would want anyone in our care to have to go through the things that you went through. So I'm genuinely sorry. I really do recognise the point you make about not making a complaint. But in a sense, even if you had, using complaints as a mechanism for improvement is a really important part of trying to create an improving culture for the organisation. So genuinely, thank you for all of that. I think, sitting at I think as you described, at the pinnacle of the iceberg of ignorance, as chair of the organisation, I do genuinely appreciate the points that you make. I've certainly seen the benefits of using the kinds of methodologies that you described in healthcare as well as in other environments, and there has been some of it in this organisation in the past, but not in a consistent, organised way. And you've come, in a sense, you've come at absolutely the right point for us as an organisation, because it's much more powerful for us as an organisation to listen to our patients and their experience and knowledge to make change happen than it is clever people who understand a lot of this this stuff from outside. So genuinely thank you for the contribution that you've made. I hope we'll create a relationship with you so that you can contribute going forward. This is a journey that we are on, but thank you very much for taking the time to explain your experience, and also to put, I think, some really constructive comments to us to help us improve our services for patients. So thank you very much, Nigel.
That's okay.
Okay, shall we then move
Thank
on
you.
to... thank you, Nigel. Let's move on then to... just get my thing. Items of any other business. Are there any other business items people want us to... No? Okay. Declarations of interest. I have 2 declarations of interest. Obviously, Wakar, ASME, and has identified a series of things which will be on the website for people to see. Sharon has submitted a nil return. But just so people understand, our declarations of interest should be on our website and for people to look at. Okay, let's move on then to the minutes of our previous meeting. Are they a reasonable reflection of what we talked about and what we agreed?
Yes.
Yes, we agree with that. I can see some. Okay, that's very good. Let's move on then. The action log. Martin. Welcome to Martin, who's standing in. Obviously, Kamara retired at the end of last year, and Martin has stepped into the breach in the interim. So, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, David. On the action log, the second one relating to the patient story is due in March, and on the first one regarding the review of training for staff with iPads, I'll pick up with Vicky Lewis upon her return.
Okay, lovely. Any questions on that? No, good. Okay. Chairman's report, just to note, it's actually, I'm now explaining the Vice Chairman's action as the Chairman. Following the meeting of the Finance and Performance Committee on the 23rd of December, the Vice Chair undertook a Chairman's action in accordance with Section 24.2 of the Trust Standing Orders to approve the PAS Re-implementation Award of Trauma Products Contract, where respectively current licence and contract arrangements expired at the end of December 2021. Can we confirm that? Yes, thank you very much. Let's then move on to the Chief Executive's report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read. It refers particularly to recent appointments that we've made to the organisation, with our replacement board company secretary joining us now on the 1st of March. Rebecca O'Connor will be joining us then, and the reference to the replacing our intrepid Chief Nursing Officer, Paula Gardner, will be joining us on the 15th of March. So we have a handover period before Vicky goes off to her retirement. The other point of note at the end of the paper is the continuing work that we are engaged in, as colleagues will know, with other partners across Worcestershire and Herefordshire in the development of the integrated care system, and we have supported a response to the consultation that Simon Stevens put out across the NHS in describing the next steps of integrated care systems from April this year onwards. And when we have an agenda that's more fulsome, we'll be able to share that response with colleagues in I would imagine in next month's meeting. Chair, I just want to spend a couple of minutes on the COVID wave 2 pandemic, and in my report there I have again paid tribute to our staff for their passion, their resilience, their fortitude, but I also want to draw attention to a couple of specifics in relation to that perhaps aren't covered in the report later on in the agenda. I think firstly to say that the burden of this responding to this disease is huge for our staff, and also I think the burden of the vaccination programme and its rollout, which, as we know, is absolutely crucial to responding to this disease. And I want to pay tribute particularly to those members of staff that have been involved in scheduling vaccination appointments, because whilst our teams were very busy in rescheduling and scheduling members of staff and patients to come for their second vaccination, the guidance from government understandably changed, and our teams were then involved in having to reschedule thousands of second doses for both staff and patients, and at the same time be involved in the scaling up of the capacity to treat more and more staff and patients with their first dose. And these are often members of staff who are unnoticed. They're the hidden heroes, and I absolutely want to pay tribute to all of them that have been involved, because it's been a huge operation across the county, particularly out of the hospital hub at the Alexandra. I also think it's important, Chair, to note that there has been quite a degree of anger and frustration amongst those members of staff who feel, and some patients who feel, that they consented to have their dose 3 weeks after the first one, and they feel that that has been changed without their consent. Having said that, I think we are, as an organisation, fully supportive of the NHS central line on getting as many people vaccinated with the first dose as possible. We know, don't we, that in these crisis situations a number of difficult decisions have to be made, and later on in the meeting I think we will describe some of the ways in which we've aimed to protect patient safety during these difficult times, because of course not only is one of our objectives to respond efficiently and effectively to the pandemic, we also have to provide timely and safe management for emergency and those patients that have urgent treatment needs, such as our cancer patients. And we also need to deliver timely treatment for all of our acutely ill patients, whilst at the same time making sure that our staff feel safe, supported and valued, and recognising that we are now into the realms of having to redeploy staff, so it's important that they feel supported wherever they're working. So we have been, as an executive, through a process of refreshing our main objectives in relation to the COVID programme, and as a consequence we've had to make some just difficult decisions in relation to prioritisation of treatment, and particularly our respiratory clinical teams, and particularly our cancer teams, such as our colorectal surgical teams, have been particularly engaged but also concerned about the implications of having to focus on making sure that we have capacity in place for the increasing numbers of patients with COVID that are needing our care. And I also, Chair, want to just draw attention to, unfortunately, our staff have had to also cope with individuals coming onto our hospital sites claiming that the NHS and the government are lying about the impact of COVID, and that has caused a degree of demoralisation amongst our staff that I believe is unacceptable, and I'm delighted that West Mercia Police and Midlands Police Service have intervened with these individuals that are peddling lies and risking the lives of people across the West Midlands. So, Chair, I feel passionate about the way in which our staff are responding. I'm really pay tribute once again to the executive team and colleagues across the county, health and social care colleagues, who are really pulling together, not only in making sure that we're able to look after our COVID patients in the best possible way, but also making sure that the vaccination rollout is as quick as possible, because that is the light at the end of the tunnel for us in relation to COVID. So I'll pause there, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No. Well, we will have the opportunity to talk a bit about COVID later on in the agenda, but just kind of to add my point to what Matthew said there. We have a remarkable set of people. You know, it's a privilege to be part of an organisation with the way in which our people have tackled these issues, and the services and the care that they've given to our patients has been absolutely remarkable. I wholeheartedly agree with the point about people who are denying the fact that the NHS is under enormous pressure, and I again am pleased that West Mercia Police have acted in the way that they have. But this is not the end of the road by any stretch of the imagination. Pressure is still building. There is still numbers of patients coming in, and we'll hear about that in a while. And at this particular moment, the relationship, I think, the way in which the whole system is pulling together is absolutely remarkable. I mean, in terms of vaccinations, for example, the primary care networks have done just the most remarkable job across the system, both in, being in the region anyway, vaccinating more care home staff and residents than anywhere else in the region on the one hand, and also massively contributing to a significant increase in the number of staff of our hospital and community services getting the vaccination. So thank you to all of that. Shall we then move on to a COVID-19, a longer view update? Paul.
Thanks, Chairman. I think it just might be helpful if I kind of provide a current update, because we provided this report to give board members an insight into what sits behind sometimes some kind of crude figures, but we did this at the end of December, and unfortunately things have progressed quite rapidly since then. So I'm more than happy to answer any issues that colleagues want to raise from the board paper, but I think it might be more helpful as we're kind of 16 days on just to describe the situation now in our hospitals. And I must also make one apology. On page 5 of the report, you will see at the second to last paragraph, I've said sadly deaths have also decreased. I apologise for that. The wording should be increased, not decreased. But in terms of where we are now, then if you look back over the last 7 days, we have had 219 new cases at an average of about 31 per day, which is significantly enhanced compared to the number shown in the board report that you have. The number of discharges from positive patients over that same period has run at 119, so roughly 17 per day, and deaths in that period has been 64, so 9 per day. So what we're actually seeing on an average day at the moment is around about 31 new positive patients, about 17 discharges, and around 9 deaths per day, which is seeing an overall increase of about 5 patients per day, and that's continuing. And you'll see in the paper we're talking about seeing a rise, but that was at 2.7. As we sit in the hospital today, then we currently have 250 positive inpatients, with a further 24 positive patients in our critical care units. We are now at super surge level in critical care. We have our main unit at the Alex, which can take 8. We have now opened Cedar Theatre at the Alex as the super surge critical care, and that is full as we speak today. That can take 4 additional patients, and we have prepared endoscopy now at the Alex as the final surge area, and that is now equipped and ready to go, but not open as we speak. At Worcester, we have the main department, which can take up to 15 patients, And as you know, we opened Aikenbury 2 as what we might describe as our green ITU. So that was taking emergency patients, but patients who were not positive. That unit has now been split and is now running at maximum, it's now equipped at maximum capacity for 18 beds, and it's now split as 9 green and 9 positive. So overall on the Worcester site, we could go to 24, and on the Alex site, the existing 12 plus 4 to 16, which is 40. That's physical beds. At the moment, we're currently running with about the equivalent of 25 level 3 beds staffed. And the teams have been working amazingly in redeploying, and we've redeployed over 60 staff now to support our critical care units across the trust. And the number of positive patients in our critical care unit, as I've said, is now is 20. As a level 3 equivalent is 24 and a half. I know that sounds a bit odd, but we've got some level 2 patients in the units, and we've surpassed the peak number that we had in wave 1. In terms of, as I said, in terms of G&A COVID patients, we've got 254 in addition to those in critical care. 250 in addition to those in critical care, and that is way beyond the peak in wave 1, which was on the 6th of October, when we had 141 patients. So you can see the numbers are rising rapidly. In terms of the total number of patients that we've had through our hospitals at the moment in both wave 1 and wave 2, then we've had a total of 1,748 patients now, of which 1,209 have been discharged, and sadly we've had 539 deaths. And our overall death ratio is about 30%, which is in line with expectations and the national position. In terms of our bed capacity, we now currently have 324 beds that are designated now for COVID positive patients out of 740. That number is significantly greater than the first wave, and because of the significant increase in presentation over the last 10 days, we've actually had to switch our bed designations. So we now have a cohort of wards that are for COVID positive patients, and they are for patients who have either tested positive or are clinically symptomatic. And we have introduced this week a slight change to that, in that we're undertaking lateral flow tests for all clinically symptomatic patients as well presenting, because we've had to make the decision that once a patient is in the COVID wards, for the overall risk profile for the hospital, they remain until discharged. So that's what the profile is looking at the moment. We're not seeing any major issues in relation to staff concerns, although we are seeing an increase in the number of absences, and the absences relating to staff who are COVID related, which could be shielding, could be due to isolation, and could be due to actually being COVID positive. And our current numbers at the moment show that we have just over 500 staff absent, of which just over 300 are COVID related in each of those 3 categories that I just outlined. And then in terms of, I know colleagues have been wanting us just to be mindful, given a number of issues that have emerged over the whole period of the pandemic around BAME staff and BAME patients and what that profile looks like. At the moment, in terms of presentation, then for those patients that are admitted, the ratios of roughly 90% are declared as British white, around 5% BAME, and around 5% have declined to indicate. And in terms of deaths, then the death rate, the death percentage is about 92% British white, about 3% BAME, and 5% where the position at the time was not declared. So that gives a kind of overall profile of both admissions and deaths. And then finally, in terms of the community, we've seen the prevalence rise quite significantly over the last 10 days. Yesterday we were reporting a rate of just under 600 per 100,000 population, and before Christmas that number was 200. So you can see the scale of the rise. It has slightly dropped today to about 560, but I wouldn't take any pleasure or any optimism from that. I think it's just a one-off. And our predictions at the moment have moved back. We were previously thinking that the peak would be around about the 22nd of January. We now think that's likely to materialise around about the 29th, 30th. So we expect to see another 12 to 14 days increasing prevalence in the community and therefore presentation into hospital. The community prevalence and then translation into hospital admissions is currently running at around about 11 days behind. So we expect to hit a peak, as I say, around about the 29th, 30th of January. And in terms of compared to the first wave, what we saw was quite a rapid rise. We hit a peak and then the decline was not as rapid as the rise, but it was clear and quite significant. At the moment, our predictions are when we do reach the peak, we will probably actually plateau for around about 14-20 days before we see any significant decline. So that's the picture at the moment. I guess I must pick up on Matthew's comment that he made, because it's very important for the board members to be aware. We have had to close down to virtually all elective admissions across the two hospitals because of the level of COVID positive inpatients, and over the last 7 days we've actually only done 2 major cancer cases that we have been able to bring in, one yesterday and one on Monday, which is quite a significant concern. We are working with the independent sector to seek to get back up to the level of activity for particularly colorectal and urological cancer that we were doing in the first wave, and we're hoping that that will all be concluded just after this board meeting and therefore become operational on Monday, being realistic, rather than tomorrow. And we are looking at whether there is the opportunity to try and carve out some inpatient accommodation on the Worcester site to allow us to do some of the major cases. If I look at the profile at the moment and having discussions with surgical and anaesthetic colleagues, we currently have probably a fit of around of the colorectal cases then we can probably do about 30% of those patients waiting for an operation in the independent sector, and about 70% it's not safe to be able to do those in the independent sector at the moment. And in relation to the head and neck, they all need to be done on the Worcester site. So that's where we sit. So our focus at the moment, our focus at the moment is on managing the patients, both the COVID and non-COVID patients in the hospital, and then trying to find ways to enable us to undertake some major complex cancer surgery on the Worcester site, and bringing online the independent. And finally, I think just that, and again Matthew mentioned this, fantastic work that the team have done at the Alex in terms of vaccination. Everyone's really pulled together. If you recall, the Alex was just meant to be a freezer holding the vaccinations. We were not meant to be giving any. The teams have worked brilliantly, and as of yesterday, we'd actually done 4,667 vaccinations, of which 2,096 were for our staff. And then we really combined well as a system. I'm not so sure how well it's gone outside of our system, but we combined really well with the PCN colleagues, and we did vaccinations for staff in our trust and the Health and Care Trust and YMAS and primary care last weekend, and we did about 5,400 vaccinations in 2 days, and we're continuing with that approach this weekend with the aim of doing another 2 boxes, so around 2,200. So we are really focused, all of the teams, on trying to get all of our staff vaccinated as soon as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, sobering numbers, I think. Richard.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Paul, for the update. And I just wanted to repeat the appreciation that Matthew and David already expressed for the teams, for our staff, and also for the executive team. It's enormous. Yeah, this is something no one has ever experienced before. I've got 3 questions, Paul. One is hospital-acquired COVID cases an issue for us, and what we are doing about it? Second, as I understand it, the ICU beds are the biggest capacity constraint we've got right now, and you've explained a bit how we've increased it. But what happens, with the current rate of patients coming into our hospital when they are full? And then the third question is, are we using any alternative kind of step-down facilities to reduce length of stay and free up beds in the hospital?
Paul, shall I pick up the hospital-acquired point to start with?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think, Richard, just in response to your question, because we've had a process of swabbing patients that's been a national requirement for quite a while, but it has changed during the period of time. So we swab patients when they come in through ED or their point of entry if it's other than ED. We swab again at day 3, and then day 5, and then day 13. And that actually allows us to determine whether it's hospital acquired. And we go through some definitions in terms of indeterminate, where it's difficult obviously to determine whether it was hospital acquired, probable, or definite. And it's on that basis, because obviously, as Paul has outlined, the community prevalence is absolutely key and has increased. And obviously we've kept a careful eye on, and it's in the COVID report, of those that are non-symptomatic. So moving to that 2 pathways that Paul described before in terms of COVID and non-COVID, because it was becoming so complex in terms of managing patients and the risks of moving patients around from wards to wards, trying to manage the previous 3 COVID pathways. So we're clearly keeping a very close eye on that. We have outbreak meetings where we are looking at some of those indeterminate and probable, so that we can be clear on actually what are the lessons to be learned whilst we manage that complex picture of hospital-acquired infection, so we're keeping a lot of time and focus from the infection control team and the senior professionals in order to keep that as low in number as we can, given the context.
In terms of, so carry on, Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of the other two questions, then when we kind of walked into the second wave, our formal staffed ITU level 3 capacity is 12 beds. We upped that to 15, then to 18, then to 21, and we're currently running at 26. So nationally, the NHS wanted all trusts to get to 175% of baseline position by last Monday, and 200% by next Monday. And as you can see from those figures, we've already surpassed the 200% national ask. As I said, we currently have 36 physical beds in place, 8 plus 4 at the Alex and 15 plus 9 at Worcester. And we can use, of those 36, as I said, at the moment we can function at about 26 level 3 equivalent, but with the mix of some level 2 patients, we have ran over the last few days at 31 of those 36 beds. We do have, again, as I said, the capability of another 4 at the Alex, and if we had to, we would then switch the whole of Aconbury 2 to positive, so go from 9 to 18, which would give us an overall position of 49 beds. But I have to say, the staffing consequences of doing that are, we're already stretched, to say the least, and we would have to go further into the blended staffing models to be able to move anywhere like that number. And if we did go that far, we would then probably be converting theatre recovery as an area for the green emergency ITU patients to manage there. The way things are functioning at the moment is this is currently running as a regional initiative around critical care. So last week, for example, we took 2 patients in from other hospitals because they were at capacity and needed to be decompressed. And we have actually this week seen 1 patient from the Alex go to another trust because we were at full capacity at 12 at the Alex and needed to decompress. So the regional networks are all in place. So if we're full, that's where you go. Obviously, I can predict your next question, Richard, and when all the regional networks are full, what do you do? Well, I mean, we would then have to redeploy even more staff in order to open up that capacity. As I said, the maximum we could go to is 49. To be honest, I don't think we will hit that level, looking at the way the numbers are going at the moment. But I may regret saying that, but I don't think we will get to that point. In terms of your third question on step down, we are working closely with our colleagues in the social services, the county council and the health and care trust. We are the health and care trust colleagues have upped the capability for the community hospitals so they can take more subacute patients, so we can move those out, but it is still a challenge, and at the moment we do still have a significant number of patients in our beds, around about 20, who do need to go to community beds, and we can't move them out at the moment. But that's not due to any barriers. Everyone is working excellently well to try and manage this. And then in addition to that, the County Council have secured blocked beds in 2 nursing homes. One is a step down where patients need to go home with social care, but the social care isn't immediately available, so they can go into a set of those blocked beds so that they're out of the hospital, and then the social care will probably pick up within 24 to 36 hours of them moving from those beds. Then in addition, we've got some block beds in a nursing home for COVID positive patients. Those are for patients who have been admitted to us from a nursing home, so they have come from a nursing home, are positive but can't go immediately back to their home that they were admitted from, and therefore to make sure that they can move on, the County Council have got these blocked beds for COVID positive patients who then go there and then ultimately go back to the care home that they were admitted from. So we're not quite at the same level as we were in the first wave. We haven't had all the continuing healthcare removed, but I strongly feel that as a system, we're working together as a system to maximise step down out of hospital.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Paul. I know you're not known for your joviality of your reports, but I think this is probably the most sobering report on any subject matter that I've heard since being on the board, and it's I must admit it's troubling to say the very least. There are a number of questions, but what I wanted you to, or other colleagues to respond to, is any potential threats we may have to oxygen supplies, either now or indeed if we do have to step up to the level that you're talking about. Are we satisfied that we can satisfy the demands of oxygen within the Trust? Thank you.
At the moment we are, and there has been some concerns raised yesterday about supply at the Alex. It's not supply, it's distribution through the pipe works, and an issue was raised as well yesterday about Aikenbury. So the estate teams are on site at the moment doing a review, but you'll know that towards the latter end of the first wave, we got the new VIE plant up and functioning at Aikenbury, and we had the evaporators put in at the Alex, and then we had some internal pipework changes, which is the link between the main pipes going down the corridor to the point they spur off to go into the wards, and we changed the gauge or width of the pipe work going into wards 1 and 2 to increase flow, and we're currently looking at a position for endoscopy and for wards 5 and 6 there. So I have to say some concerns were raised yesterday, which is new, but they're being investigated as we speak. But as at this morning, there is no supply or flow concerns.
Thanks, Paul. Wakar.
Thank you, Chairman. Paul, thank you for the update. Really, I agree with others. Really sobering to hear the statistics. The stats that you provided on the in relation to ethnic breakdown, I found that really helpful. So if you could please continue to provide then your updates, I'd really appreciate it. Perhaps expand it on the basis of age as well, and gender if possible, so it just gives an idea as to what's happening in terms of Worcestershire. You mentioned about 500 staff absent, and out of that 300 COVID related. Are you able to comment in terms of what support that we as an employer, in terms of our health and safety responsibility, what we providing to support provided to those 300 COVID related staff who are suffering?
If I can pick that up, please, if that's okay.
Feel free.
Yeah, so what we've done is to undertake an individual occupational health risk assessment for all colleagues. to identify those that might be at an increased risk of COVID because of their medical history or background. We have got some further work to do, so the latest figures on that is 92% compliance for our workforce, and there's a live database, so it takes into consideration starters and leavers. So we've got 92% compliance overall, but only 85% for Black, Asian and minority ethnic colleagues. So that's about 152 BAME colleagues that haven't yet completed the risk assessment. So my team are contacting those individuals by telephone to troubleshoot and find out why we haven't got that compliance. That's happening as we speak. And then those forms help identify the reasonable adjustments that we need to put in place to maintain those individuals' safety. And so things that we have put in place are moving them away from positive areas into green areas, to support their remote or home working, to change their place of work or hours of work, and where appropriate to look at the enhanced PPE. So there's a number of things that we've put in place, and we track the level of risk of colleagues, and that we've got about 28% of the colleagues who've completed a form that got identified some form of risk, and we make sure that we've got the right interventions, and each form is reviewed by the occupational health service, and referrals are made where necessary to make sure we talk that through with the individuals. In addition to that, we've got quite a comprehensive employee health and wellbeing programme, and feedback is, it's really comprehensive, and everything in there that staff and colleagues feel they need support with, we've got. What the issue being is that colleagues aren't accessing this at the earliest opportunity is our findings to date. Potentially leaving it until things are they're feeling overwhelmed or things are getting on top of them. So we are undertaking a significant amount of work at the moment on making sure staff are aware of what's available to them, and it's all focusing on the prevention element. And it's okay not to be okay. And so people feel confident to have those conversations with colleagues and managers at an early opportunity. So that's just a snapshot of what we're doing, but happy to provide more detail if you've got any more questions.
Thank you, Tina. Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'd just like to echo what colleagues have said in terms of, those people that are working on the front line in this. They've been working tirelessly across the country as well as across this trust. I think my question is really back to the engagement piece. I know that the priority at the moment is really focused on what we've got in front of us, particularly with the infections, but it's difficult to think about prevention in some of this. But in terms of engagement, is there any plans to actively make sure that we're listening to the voices of those that are families as well as the patients? Because increased patients brings increased families, inquiries, and people's anxieties. Are we answering all the questions before they actually ask them? And are we going to utilise the voices of those people when it comes to the comms? Because we all know sometimes some people will not listen to the voices of the professionals, but they will listen to the voices of the everyday person. So hearing about Sally down the road who's had an experience with the hospital may go further than it will with the national kind of picture that's going out. So that's what I wanted, some reassurances around that part of the strategy.
Yeah, really, really good point, Sharon. Do you want to start off with that, Matthew, and then bring other people in?
Well, perhaps Vicky went straight in with her hand up, and I'll come in at the end if that's all right.
Okay, Vicky.
I think it's just to respond to that point, Sharon. It's just we've done a lot of work in wave one to look at how we actively supported relatives in terms of both the communication but access to their relatives, given that visiting was so restricted and has remained restricted. So we've got a clear policy of compassionate visiting, but actually the ward managers supported to be very engaged with the family through active route for them to come through, because a lot of the concerns that were coming through and our response to those concerns were the difficulty and the frustration of trying to phone through to a ward and not being able to get through. So the response was actually how we set up iPads and communication so they could actually virtually link in with their relatives on the ward and actually speak directly to them and have points of contact. And we've been with one patient story that we had probably about 3-4 months ago. A patient shared their experience of how we could make improvements on that and be proactive, and talked about a family liaison roles. And we've been actively implementing that as we've gone into this second wave, third wave. So there's a lot of proactive work that's gone on, and I'm sure Richard will want to come in terms of the comms about that. So actually how we've built up internal communication so that all staff are briefed on all those different routes, able to explain that to our patients, and then our website. But I know Richard's got his hand up now, so he can pick that up and follow that through.
Richard.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we have colleagues who were here at the time. I remember when Phil Dolby, one of our former patients, gave a very powerful patient story. He and a number of other patients who've been in our care and gone home safely have been very helpful in spreading public health messages. And Sharon's absolutely right. You know, it's much more meaningful when it comes from people who've been through that experience. And we have been trying very hard to get accurate and up-to-date information out through all community channels, not just us, but in partnership with comms colleagues at the CCG, with the Health and Care Trust. Yesterday we issued a joint press statement with the County Council, again trying to reinforce stay-at-home messages that Mike Hallisey contributed to. So we are trying to get these important messages out through every channel that we can. There is always more that we can do. Sharon particularly reaching different parts of the community. I should say, if he's still on the call, Simon's also been very helpful through Healthwatch. So it's something that we are focused on, both in terms of making sure that our staff have all the information they need about the operational pressures, the vaccine and other things, and that we are getting public messages out, and hopefully some of our local media, who I know are listening to this meeting live, will also assist subsequently in repeating some of the messages that they've heard this morning.
Okay, thanks. Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and welcome, Sharon. I think your points are really well made, and I think one of the things, just building on what Vicky and Richard have said, is how we enlist your help in developing our way of working even more, because you know, we've done a huge amount with our staff in creating the opportunity for staff to speak up over the course of this pandemic, and of course our staff are our local residents in the main, and have access into all different communities, and therefore there's the staff engagement approach, but there's also how we build on that direct communication using multiple channels into different parts of our community. So, Chair, I think we're all agreed that this is a key part of the way in which we want to work going forward.
Okay, Richard, sorry, Wakar, is that an old hand or is it a new one?
That's an old hand.
All right, okay. Richard, you want to come back?
Just only, Chairman, to mention and give credit to the members of our increasingly active network for colleagues from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds who have also been really useful in terms of raising awareness and bringing a perspective of the different issues that we need to address, for reaching out to different parts of our staff community and our local community. And colleagues may be aware, a member of that network produced some very powerful messages this week to encourage colleagues from BAME backgrounds to take up the COVID vaccine. Again, you know, more that we can do, but the BAME network has been a really powerful and valuable source of insight and a channel for community engagement over the past few months.
Okay, I think we've covered most of the issues. Just to reinforce the kind of the really difficult position healthcare systems find themselves in at the moment. We're doing our absolute best for our patients. We're trying to expand our capacity to deal with the demand as it comes in, and hopefully people are assured that Paul and the team and the executive team generally are completely engaged in making this a reality. I note Paul's optimism about our ability to deliver during the surge, and no stone will be unturned in order to make us do that. Our staff and the organisation are absolutely committed to the local people of Worcestershire to ensure that we give them the best possible services we can in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We're working very well with the system overall, which I think is a real plus for all of this. Primary care community services and the local authorities are working really well together to make this happen. I think everyone is dedicated to do this. The area that I'm increasingly worried about, and we covered there, but I think in future, when we're looking at some of the numbers, it might be helpful to do that, are those people who are, in a sense, silent in all of this. Those people are not getting the services that they need. Those people are not getting the interventions that they need. They're sat at home, worried, concerned, becoming ill. And all of that is a really important part of all of this. And I recognise completely the work that Paul and the team are doing to make sure that, particularly in relation to cancer, that we can put arrangements in place to make sure that we can do as much of that as possible. But nevertheless, that area, I think, remains a real concern. And this may sound a strange way of putting it in a way. Some good news is that the emergency care, not COVID, is holding up. Now, that may seem strange, but in terms of people who are really ill from non-COVID, the numbers coming into the hospital are in line with what we might have had in the past. Some of the minor injuries have gone down significantly, but the major stuff, and one of the concerns we had last time was that people were at home having strokes or heart attacks, feeling they couldn't come into hospital. Well, the evidence looks as if that is working well at the moment, so it seems to be a good thing. But if we could think about how we could get some numbers, some kind of idea about what's happening for those people who can't get the treatment, I think it would then help us make the right kinds of decisions. And so, for example, Paul talked then about a kind of the idea that we might carve out some beds in Worcester Royal to treat cancer patients. That will have an inevitable impact on the availability of beds in other areas. So these sorts of decisions are really important to make, and if we've got some robust data, it makes it all the more easier to make those decisions. So thanks. And can I finally on all of this just thank the executive team for the remarkable amount of effort and time and commitment and drive that you're putting into all of this. It is absolutely remarkable to see. So Matthew and the team, thank you on behalf of all the non-executives. Thank you for the kind of great work that you're doing at the moment. So well done. So bask in that glory while you can. Thank you. Okay, let's move on then, and I'm very conscious of time. We've got the integrated performance report, which I'm going to take as read, really. But Matthew, do you want to say one or two words overall before we move on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the report for November, so given what we've been talking about for the last best part of an hour, it feels a little bit out of date, but I just want to, you'll see the areas that we've referenced as an executive team that we feel the board needs to focus on. But I just spend a half a minute just referencing some of the things that aren't in those headlines that have continued to improve in November. So our vacancy rates on page 80 of the report and our turnover rate continue to move in the right direction, which is part of, I think, our continuing drive and the shift in reputation of the organisation, making us a more attractive organisation to work and to stay working at. And also, despite the pressures of winter and COVID, our mandatory training rates were still nudging up in the right direction. So also draw attention to our stroke services improvement on page 57 of the report, and Chair, the reference obviously to the elective care patients. We were starting to see some good progress in elective care recovery during November, as referenced on page 41 of the report. Of course, since then we've seen the surge in wave 2 create difficulties for us to continue to deliver on that. And also we saw during November a continuing improvement in our emergency access and the related metrics covered on page 38, but also noting that with the significant bed pressures that we started to experience in December and January, we have seen an increase in ambulance handover challenges, but we haven't seen a significant increase in corridor care, which I think was also something as a board we were and still are completely focused on. So the key areas are in the report, the areas that we feel that we need to focus more on: the workforce demand and supply, what was touched on in relation to COVID. There are numbers in the report around the long waiters, Chair, so one of the things that perhaps we'll do for the next meeting is get a little bit more under the skin of that data, specifically either in the COVID report or in the integrated performance report. Infection control, I think generally, I know that Vicky wants to make a comment on. Sepsis, I know that Mike will want to reference particularly the discussions that we are having through the Quality and Safety Governance Committee. And from a finance perspective, you have quite a bit of detail there, and we know from Amanda Pritchard at Simon Stevens that the likelihood is that the financial regime, as it has been this year, is going to continue for the foreseeable future because of the challenges that the NHS is experiencing at the moment. Nonetheless, we remain focused on reducing the cost of delivery of care wherever we can, and particularly in relation to agency spend, albeit that we are under significant pressure to make sure that we staff our clinical areas, and the fill rates associated with bank and agency are under challenge as the supply is being outstripped by demand, not only in our patch but across the region. So I'll pause there, perhaps hand over, Chair, to Vicky to just reference the infection control, because I'm mindful of time.
You're mute.
If I take myself off mute, it might help. I think obviously part of what I wanted to say I've outlined in response to Richard's question previously in terms of the complexity of what we're dealing with COVID. I think the report in terms of infection control really it's managing all of that in terms of both the pathways and the management of the points that are set out on page 61 of 102, where we've got clearly the actions that we've been taking in relation to the MRSA that was reported in November, and the likely source of that with a very complex patient where the blood culture also grew MSSA, and our issues around C. difficile and the carbapenem use, which has been discussed on previous, certainly in detail in Quality Governance Committee, but raised at the board previously, and we're doing further work with that. That was completed at the end of December, although I haven't received the report from that. So I think the level of assurance at the moment in terms of infection control is a difficult one really to outline, given the complexity of that community prevalence and the management of our pathways and the number of outbreaks that we're managing. But I'm happy to take any questions on the points that have been set out in the report or anything further in terms of COVID specific and the outline of the two pathways that we're now managing our cases through.
Mike?
So if I can come in on the carbapenem bit, I've seen the snapshot review now. And in the COVID ward is where there's a slight higher rate of carbapenem use than one might expect. So there's a focus on that with pharmacy and the infection prevention and control team. But across the rest of the organisation, then the audit suggested the use was appropriate. So I know Bill's concerned about it, as am I, but I think we've got a handle on that, and there is a real focus on it. And I think it's anxiety around the really sick people on the COVID positive wards that's pushing the use.
Okay, do you want to talk about sepsis while you've got the...
Yeah, so I mean, I think the problem is that the data here, I mean, it's helpful in it's a small improvement in most of the areas. Mike McAlinden launched the e-learning in October, so it won't have impacted on this. And the work with our Chief Registrar, Sarah Packer, is also ongoing, but we won't see the impact of that probably for 3 or 4 months, realistically. We're trying to get some real-time data out. The problem with the way we're doing this at the moment is, of course, we're looking retrospectively all the time, and we're looking to use the data collection form as the sole mechanism of recording an episode of sepsis, so that the juniors are not having to repeat everything, which is where we get data loss and data quality issues. So that work is ongoing, and it is a big focus at the moment. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. I mean, we would normally spend a lot more time on this, but given the circumstances we're in, I think we need to move. We need to move on. So thank you for that, Matthew. In fact, thank you for the. Any items in relation to the board committees that you want to raise that have not been dealt with elsewhere in the report? Mark? No. Okay, that's fine. The Trust Management Executive report. Any questions? No. Good. The date of the next meeting, 11th of February 2021. Thank you very much for your attendance. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten. Simon from Health Watch, are you still here? I can't see you on the.
I'm still here, Chair.
Simon, how nice to see you, and I should have welcomed you at the beginning. Are there any questions that you want to ask, or any issues that you want to raise that we haven't dealt with?
No, I mean, the first thing I want to do is obviously thank you and all your staff on behalf of patients and the community for the work that you're doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't know whether Health Watch could help address this issue of COVID deniers that Matthew mentioned, in terms of the demonstrations that you had. Perfectly happy, Matthew, to lend our weight behind challenging some of that under our advice and information responsibilities. And the third thing I wanted to just pick up, I mean, this is I guess it's a personal issue as much as anything. But I think I told you at a previous meeting, and my wife returned to nursing after 40 years of not being a nurse. She returned off, sticky start in May, but joined your trust in December in interventional radiology, which is making use of the skills that she acquired in medical device sales over a period of 20-30 years. And I have to say, I mean, she's worked for a lot of employers during her career, but just to reflect on, you know, there's often been a comment that the trust would find it difficult to recruit staff because of the some of the reputational issues it's had. But I just wanted to pass on the fact that she thinks that the trust has the most caring and thoughtful management team and is the best organised employer that she's ever worked for. Particularly in regard to the consultants she works for, and she spent a lot of time working with orthopaedic consultants over the years. And just to pick up on the continuous improvement piece from that patient's story, one of the things she would say is talk about the commitment to continuous improvement within the interventional radiology team where she works, in terms of doing exactly what that gentleman was referring to, in trying on a case-by-case basis to improve the service that team can provide in the way in which it interacts with other parts of the hospital. So I just wanted to sort of publicly pass that on to you.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. People often pass other things on to us, but really nice to see something positive. So thanks very much for that, Simon, and we'll continue to work with you constructively to make sure our patients get the best possible care that they need. And I'm sure that Matthew will talk to you about how you can help us in this. I know it's not an argument or a debate, it's just this issue of people who are denying that the NHS is under pressure. So thank you for all of that. Okay,
can I just say, Chair, we've got a board meeting next Thursday. And Richard's already arranging for somebody from the Trust to come and talk to us about the COVID situation, to pick up on Sharon's point.
Very good, very good. Thanks very much. Okay, well, thank you very much. And that's the end of the meeting. Do we sign off now and re-sign on, Richard?
No, the meeting of the board as corporate trustees of the charity is still on this link,
okay.
Chairman.
Okay, well, give 5 minutes and we'll reconvene as the corporate board of the charity. Thank you. Right then, are we ready? Richard, are we ready? Richard? We're ready, okay. Welcome everybody to this meeting of the corporate trustees of the Worcestershire Acute Hospitals charity, which is in public as was the previous meeting. It's a short agenda. We're not planning to spend a lot of time going through all this. There are lots of other people who do this on our behalf. But first of all, apologies for absence. I've got Bill Tunnicliffe. Any more?
If I could add, David, Anita Day, Vicky Lewis, and also Richard Oosterham.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Minutes of the last meeting on the 12th of November. Are they a reasonable reflection? Yes, they are. It's a long time ago, but I remember the 12th of November seems a long time ago, doesn't it? Okay, and then the charitable funds report. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't anticipate going through this, rather than take it as read and accept any questions. The only thing I was going to say is the work of the charity goes on, and it's predominantly focused on staff well-being throughout the trust, and that's where the efforts are being expended, working closely with a staff well-being group as to where that group wants the funds that we do have and the funds that we do find from NHS charities together where they're to be spent. The only other thing I was going to mention was that the handbook that is mentioned in the last minutes is due to go out, and it's ready to go out. And the handbook basically explains everything anybody would need to know about the charity and how our funds are used and how to access them. But we believe at this moment in time it will be not the best time to send that out into the trust, so that's not happening as yet, because when it is sent out, I think there's going to try and be a little bit of publicity around the charity's work, and quite clearly the staff aren't able to focus on that at the moment, so we're deliberately delaying the sending out of that at this moment in time. But any questions I'm sure I can field, or if not, Richard will be able to assist me.
Okay, thank you. Richard, do you want to add anything to that?
Chairman, no, as Mark said, a lot of the effort of the charity has been and continues to focus on staff welfare, but we are also offering support for some of the family liaison services that will benefit patients and families, and also over the Christmas period, as well as funding some of the decorations and thank you packages for staff. We were also lucky to receive some donations that were used to provide gifts for people who were inpatients on Christmas Day, as well as patients using ED and MRU on Christmas Day.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, do we have to note the report? Is that we've noted the report? Yes, we do. Note the report. Thank you very much. That's the end of the meeting for the charitable trustees. Thank you very much for all of that. If we could reconvene as a board in 10 minutes' time, you'll have to leave this particular link and join another one for the private section of the board. Thank you.